If someone ever told you money doesn't grow on trees, show them this plant and have them watch this video. Although I guess technically it isn't a tree. This is the passion fruit vine. And in today's video, I'm gonna show you how I took it from a tiny little plant like that one to a massive wall of passion fruit in under about a year. Believe it or not, there's actually something behind this wall, and it's a 5,000-gallon rainwater cistern that fills up my pond and waters the rest of my garden. And the whole reason I initially wanted to plant this passion fruit is to just cover it up because it was a bit of an eyesore, and I think I succeeded a little too well. Passion fruit is a vine that produces some of the more expensive fruits that you can find at a store, even here in San Diego, California, where you can grow passion fruit pretty easily. It's $3.99 for a single fruit. And this season, I harvested easily over 1,000 off of that massive vine that you see back there. You might be thinking, well, hey man, I can't grow passion fruit in my region. Well, I've got a couple varieties that will work down to zone 5. So first we need to talk about the overall types of passion fruit you can grow, and then we'll get into its care. The first thing to know is you need to get an edible variety. There's ornamental types of passion flower. Do not get those unless you're fine with it as a landscaping use. So I have probably the most popular variety with me right here. This is the one that I planted that's behind me, and that's called the Frederick variety. This is a great warm climate passion fruit, but if you're not in a warm climate, there's one called Nellie Kelly that can work down to maybe zones 8, 9, and up to 10. This one's probably a little bit better for those zones 9, zones 10. Now, if you're in a container garden, there's also a suggestion for you, and that would be Black Knight. The thing with passion fruit is it goes crazy. It can grow 10 plus feet in a year. This one definitely grew more than 10 feet in a single year. And so a dwarf variety like Black Knight will work if you're maybe a balcony gardener with some great sun exposure. Give that one a shot. If you're lucky enough to be in an extremely tropical climate like zone 11 plus, then Panama Red and Panama Gold are the go-tos. They're not the purple passion fruit, but they're still quite nice. And now for those of you in a zone 5 and up, all the way up to my zone here, zone 10, Maypops. That is the variety to go for. The flower itself is purple as well as the fruit. The fruit's a little bit smaller, and it's also the choice used in blends and teas and stuff like that, but it's still a passion fruit and it's still tasty. I think it's a bit less sweet than the Frederick variety that I've got behind me, but it's really cool that there's a vining, somewhat tropical or delectable fruit that you can grow in climates across most of America. So if we have a variety, let's talk about how to actually plant it for success. Now, I always like to start with sunlight and location, especially for something like a passion fruit that's gonna last in your garden for year after year. So as I stand here in my backyard garden, the sun's overhead, it's about 11 a.m. right now, and I'm getting full exposure from that southern direction right over to my passion fruit block, I guess I'll call it, the blob over there. So great sun exposure, you're gonna wanna give it that, but you also need to give it some kind of support structure because of how vigorously it grows. So the way that we approached it is pretty cool. You can see a bit of a clue of how we did this, and it's just T-posts, like this guy right here. These are about $8, $10. And then if I dig through, there is a vinyl wrapped wire with about a 2 to 3 inch spacing on the grid. So because ours is on a curved structure here, what we did is we put T-posts about a foot off of the edge of the water tank, and then we curved around the vinyl wrapped wire. Now, of course, you're probably not going to be doing it on a curved surface. You might be doing it more on a fence, and an approach like this, which is our grape trellis, could work. So what you do is you've got a metal wrapped wire here, like a metal corded wire, and you can run that across like this, or you can also just take some T-posts, put them up, and then throw some chicken wire or some vinyl wrapped wire or hog panel across, and in no time you'll see a passion fruit vine go all the way like that in the first season. In most climates, you want to get this in the ground in spring. I got this in the ground, I believe, in March of last year. So it's been about 15 months that it's been in the ground. And I put one over there and I put one over there. So they were spaced about 15 feet apart so they could kind of meet in the middle, so to speak. But frankly, even if I had only planted one, I would have seen vigorous growth. So you don't need to plant more than one if you don't want to. I just found that it sped up the coverage of this system in the way that I wanted. As far as care for passion fruit, once it's established, it really likes to do its own thing. So it does need a little bit of fertility early on. You do need to make sure that you loosen that soil up when you plant it out. But frankly, after it's established, I have not needed to actively water that passion fruit vine, like putting it on irrigation or coming out on a set schedule to actually water it. almost at all, and it's gone crazy. Now, of course, if you're growing that maypop in a colder climate, or you do have some unique growing conditions, you're gonna have to adapt your watering and fertilizing and just sort of watch the plant. The fortunate thing about it is that there's so much foliage and so much leaf that you can look and see if you have an issue with wilt, perhaps from a disease or watering, or if you have some sort of nutrient deficiency. You see like a yellowing or weird colored veins on the leaves, you can troubleshoot that really quickly just because there are so many leaves. So let's assume you've got some passion fruit in the ground, you follow the guide up to this point, and you have a big old block like this, and you're getting to the end of the season. So you've started to get some fruit like this right here. Maybe you've got even some ripe ones, and you're wondering, what am I actually supposed to do to keep this thriving? This is where pruning comes into play in a big way. A lot of things like apple trees, citrus, etc., they have very specific rules on pruning that can either make or break the harvest. And it's somewhat similar, I would say, with passion fruit, because passion fruit is going to fruit on the new vine growth, which means all of this stuff that you see behind me is not really going to produce a ton of fruit next year. It'll be off of the stuff that's growing right now, like perhaps this little offshoot right here. But I'm not gonna see a lot of growth off of these guys down here. And what that means is I'm probably gonna need to come by here after the fruiting season's over and give it a serious hedge trim and manual prune. Of course, when you're pruning a fruit tree or most plants, you wanna go with the 3Ds rule first. Dead, disease, damage, take any of that stuff off. But with passion fruit, it's kind of overwhelming to find the dead, diseased, and damaged tissue. So I think what you can do is just come through and cut off a ton of it, aggressively prune it back, and you will be surprised at how vigorously it comes back the next year. Now, as the passion fruit gets older and older and older, of course, it's not gonna come back as vigorously, so you might need to be a little bit more selective at that point in time. And I would imagine there's a point where I will want to replace this vine completely with a new planting just to get a hard reset and see if I can get some new vigor out of it, but I'm probably a few years away from that myself. And now we need to discuss how to know when your passion fruit is ripe and do a little bit of a taste test. Believe it or not, this is not a ripe passion fruit. It looks kind of plump and juicy and delicious, but if I cut it open, I would be pretty sad. My taste buds would be angry at me. So I will show you how to harvest, and it's actually extremely easy. What you do is I grab a post or I grab a cluster of vines and I just go like this. And here's what happens. You've got these beautiful wrinkly guys that have fallen off of the plant. And this is how you know it's ripe. And here we have it, my friends, a beautiful passion fruit. Do as I say, not as I do. I wouldn't cut a passion fruit directly into your own hand like I just did. But take a look at that. Look at that interior. That is exactly the look we are going for. And let's just get in there with a little bit of a taste. The tartness and sweetness, what you want is you want that coloration inside, because if it's a little bit too light, it hasn't developed enough sweetness. And if it's overly sort of orangey yellow, it's actually developed too much tartness and you won't get any of those natural sugars in there. And remember, all this passion fruit was grown to cover a 5,000 gallon rainwater cistern in my backyard, which is a fantastic sustainable way to divert more resources from wastewater systems to a productive backyard, which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, our friends at Planet Wild. We've been working with Planet Wild for at least 6 months now. I've personally been a member for just a touch longer than that at their Legend tier, because it's a really epic mission, and this is what they do. So they partner up with local organizations around the world to impact conservation efforts across a really broad range. They've rehabilitated Kenya's soils by digging out these earth smiles in partnership with a local org that helps capture, I think, about 2 billion liters of water over the next 20 years, which is significantly transforming the landscape. They've also saved the world's smallest and cutest bear, and when I say they, I mean you and I. I've supported some of these missions. I've been able to see the impact of those missions on their incredibly epic YouTube channel. So I encourage you to become part of the community. There's a ton of different tiers for membership. You can cancel anytime. You can see exactly where your money goes by following the YouTube channel and even downloading the app and voting on the missions that you personally want to see funded. And on top of that, the first 200 people to sign up with the QR code or the link in the description will get a free month of membership. So I'm a huge fan of it. It's such a cool project. I love going over to the YouTube channel. My notifications are on to see where my money has gone and what cool things that we've supported. So I encourage you guys to join. Thanks to them for sponsoring this video. Grow some passion fruit, guys. Good luck in the garden and keep on growing.